The Awkward Yeti was created by cartoonist Nick Seluk. I'm probably saying that wrong, and I apologize. In late 2012, followed by the Heart and Brain spinoff in 2014. Nick pursued his lifelong dream of becoming a professional cartoonist after serving 9 years in the corporate world as a graphic designer. The Oatmeal.com is written, drawn, and coded by Matthew Inman. Matthew lives here in Seattle. He subsists on a steady diet of crickets and whiskey. Maybe you should ask him that for the Q&A, okay? Let us know how that goes. Nick and Matthew will be signing their books after the event, where you will have an opportunity to meet them. And I think since we have such a small crowd, we'll just trust that you're calm enough to slowly walk back there and not mob them, okay? We will be doing Post-it notes on your books so that you can get your books personalized. If you don't know what that means, it means that you will have your name or your friend's name in it if you're giving it as a Christmas gift, which is very thoughtful of you. If you'd like to purchase additional books, they are in the back, just straight out the main doorway. There are other books other than the 2 that they're here for tonight, so you might want to check that out. So help me in welcoming them with a big round of applause. Here they are.
Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hey.
Is this actually on, or am I just yelling loud? Okay, hang on.
This is off to a great start.
This is really uncomfortable. I don't think it's on, so there we go.
Hello? Oh, hey.
We were hoping we could walk up the middle, like we're getting married kind of thing, but we didn't, so.
No, too late. So, hey, I'm Nick. This is Matt. More of you probably know him. So my book is called Heart and Brain Gut Instincts. Some of you know that. I really don't know how this audience is split. Who knows my stuff? Okay, good. I think everybody knows Matt, right?
Nobody raised their hand.
I know Matt.
But yeah, I got one. I got one.
So the second collection of comics, I'd say like 40 or 50% of it is new stuff, and it's still heart and brain focused, but started introducing more of the other characters like tongue and bowels and stuff like that. And I think Matt is here featuring your coloring book, but everything's here.
Yeah, right? 404 Not Found is here. I did a coloring book mostly because I had this story in mind and I didn't know what to do with it. My website for years has never had a 404 error page. So if you go to theoatmeal.com and you go to something that's broken, it just shows the standard error page. So I wanted to make this story about a robot named robot number 404 who goes missing. And the whole robot community is trying to figure out where he is. And they go on these adventures trying to find him. And I wanted to turn that story into my 404 error page. At the same time, I was getting into drawing things that were a lot more ornate, the kind of things that would work really, really well in a coloring book. So I decided to make a coloring book called 404 Not Found, about a missing robot. The thing I didn't realize was trying to market a website and a product called 404 Not Found is really hard. Because, I mean, it doesn't matter how many people you point to that link, everyone's like, it's broken, dude, like, I'm not gonna click on that. So I think I sort of, neutered my marketing efforts from that. The other problem, not a problem, it's just sort of a creative thing I ran into, is I don't really write a lot of kid-friendly stuff, and 404 Not Found is kid-friendly. So I felt really frustrated because I'm drawing and I can't, be like lazy and just make penises everywhere. And like I have to like actually write a story this time. So I thought, let's take all the penises and put them in a different book. And that was the second one that I released called Penis Fairies and Queef Storms. And that one we just did on the crowdfunding platform. We're gonna try to sell it through my store this holiday season, but we'll see what happens. So then I got both. I got my cute, lovable robot story, and then I got the book full of, bear penises and like anal abscesses and abscesses? Abscessi? You should know. Yeah.
Why should I know?
Because you do medical books.
I don't know anything.
So yeah, that's kind of the thing I'm supporting right now, the book-wise. The other thing we're working on, as some of you may know, we have a new card game called Bears vs. Babies. And it's like a monster building card game where you draw Bear cards, I have no idea how many people you know what this is. I'm just staring out in the crowd. Okay,
Has
some people are
anybody
nodding.
seen his Kickstarter or backed it?
Hooray! Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Me as well. You're welcome.
So I'm working on that. It's fun because I get to draw like all the hideous things that I've always wanted to draw, and it's sort of become this game where you could almost play it like Super Fight, where you get to build these awful creatures who go to war with equally awful babies.
Cool, yeah. So I think what we're gonna do is keep it kind of casual. I forgot my PowerPoint with the 104 slides in it, so we'll just do a Q&A. So if you have a question for either of us or both of us, we could like talk at the same time. Do you have a question?
I have a question, yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Can you make a book called, Penis versus Brain? Will that happen? Because those two, they are different ideas about what should happen.
It might have to be a collaboration.
Okay.
I get requests for that kind of stuff all the time. Not yet.
All right.
Okay, now anybody that's not up here. There. Oh, there's a microphone I just found out.
Oh.
This is going to help everybody.
I have shark socks on tonight.
Go Sharks.
Yeah, I have shark socks. They're my second favorite socks.
That was the question?
Yeah.
About your socks?
Yeah.
All right. Mine are black and gray.
Any other questions not about my apparel, but about Nick's? Yes.
How do you feel like the steady diet of crickets and whiskey has kind of influenced your writing?
Yeah, that goddamn thing. I said that once 7 years ago, and every bookstore for 7 years uses that as my byline. I don't know why. I don't know where they get it from. I don't eat crickets. I don't drink whiskey. I appreciate the comedy, but my intro should be Matthew Inman, Lord of Darkness, who changed the face of things using his dick drawings. I don't know. It's got to be better than that. So to answer your question, no.
Came down from the 7th level of cartooning.
Can you guys repeat the questions since they're not using the microphones?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, you guys use the microphones. Come on. Who has a question and would like to use a microphone? Right there. Wait for the microphone. Wait. Not yet.
So, what inspired you to use anatomy as characters?
Are you talking to me because he uses a lot of I used to make comics about a lot of different types of things, and one of the subjects that I got into a lot was science and just like basic concepts here and there. And I found that those were really catching with people the most. And I think just like the biology and the organs in general translated better to characters, and characters are something I've really enjoyed making since I was a kid. So yeah, it was sort of something that developed with the audience. That was like a very good answer, but I'll get better. Wait, you're closer, and then maybe you next. Be patient.
Which organ do you most identify with?
Are we both answering this one? I'm going to assume this is for me, right? We should address, because again, the penises and stuff. I'd say with my characters, I'm probably more of a brain. I tend to make decisions that are more reserved, and I think that makes the most sense for me. But I try to be a little bit more like Heart, and try to get out of my comfort zone more and do things that I'm not used to doing. But brain.
I actually wouldn't have expected that. I mean, you seem smart and logical, but I don't know, I thought more...
I think more in the anxiety than the smart.
Oh, I see, I see.
I think over here is next, actually.
Yeah, way up here.
Could both of you give any advice to a wannabe webcomic artist?
Sure. I get asked this a lot, and for starters, cartooning right now is a great place to be. There's a lot of ways you can get your comic out to everyone. Facebook, Reddit, the internet in general, social media. You don't need to be lucky and get into a newspaper. Anyone can make a comic now. So being active in social media obviously is a big part of it. The other thing is just to, with my case, just iterate a lot, figure out what people respond to, what they don't, what you enjoy writing, and what you don't. And I read Scott McCloud's Making Comics a long time ago, and it's a great book. The first thing that he said in that book, first page, first panel, was basically, do you have a pen and some paper? It doesn't even matter if it's like a whatever takeout menu. Do you have something you can write on? Start making comics. And I love that idea, because I always had this sort of notion that I had to do it a certain way, and I had to draw a certain way, and write a certain way to fit all these guidelines from all these imaginary people that make comics before I did. And just that notion that you don't need to do any of those things, that you can just go and make something wonderful, and you don't have to worry about, am I drawing hands the right way? Or do my characters look stupid, or do they look real? Specifically, too, if you're writing comedy, I actually find the less detail I draw, the better. Because when you start to add a lot of complex features, it gets into that kind of uncanny valley where it becomes unlikable. I've built a very popular comic basically on overweight, bald, oval people, So that's my advice.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, so I probably won't. I agree though, like a simple character, something that you can project your own personality onto, is a really good way to develop. So, but that's.
Yeah, the other thing too, I've noticed, I've lately found that cartooning, webcomics in particular, divided into two categories. There's relatability, and then there's everything else. And the relatable comics I've made, where you read it and you feel like someone out in the universe is connecting with you, and like somebody else does the thing that I do that I find so frustrating. People really, really like that. I've used a lot of those comics that sort of as like home runs. Like if I, ever felt like, oh, I don't think I can keep doing cartooning full time. It felt like if I stuck to relatability, that was a good core to start from, rather than trying to be Perry Bible Fellowship right out of the gates, or The Far Side or something, because that's not necessarily relatable. It's just really clever cartooning, but it's really, really hard to consistently write that way. Like Gary Larson is just this freak. He's this anomaly that made a beautiful, perfect comic, in my opinion. So if I'm lazy, I'll just be like, don't you hate it when, whatever, you open your coffee and it's all spilly and blah, blah, and people are like, oh, I hate that. And then boom, cartooning
You just
success.
described half of my comics.
It's fine, it's half of mine. So, yeah, that's all I got.
Somebody
raised. There we go.
What are your favorite comics and or like graphic cartoons?
I grew up reading the newspaper, comics, so I read Calvin and Hobbes, The Far Side. We were just talking about Dilbert and some others. So I read all of those. I watched The Simpsons growing up, so I think that was a big influence for me. Into the webcomic world, one of my big influencers was Matt. Yeah, you did it. But I think that was a big part of what got me thinking like there's more to it than just putting it out there. Like you could actually make this a job and do something with it. So I was really fascinated with that. And on top of that, he's really funny. So yeah.
Yeah, I grew up on a lot of the same ones that he did, like Calvin and Hobbes, stuff like that was always my favorite. When I started the Oatmeal, I actually didn't draw inspiration from comics. I just found I couldn't write jokes that way. Also, I forgot who asked the question, so I just keep staring at everybody. So just whoever you are, I think it was you. It was you, okay. I actually found more inspiration in stand-up comedy with the Oatmeal than I did in cartooning, because a lot of my comics used to be longer. So rather than relying on panel, punchline, which I was very bad at, you had this rolling dialogue where you could build and you could tell 12 jokes instead of one. And I actually found that to be easier. Rather than trying to get the whole punchline into 4 panels, or 1 panel, or 3 panels, you could tell a story. One of the best examples that I found as inspiration was Eddie Izzard. He's a stand-up who, he's one of my favorites, and what I liked about his stand-up was the core of his comedy came from the fact that he would tell stories about Jesus water skiing, fighting Nazis, and it somehow would make sense and be hilarious and funny without just resorting to cussing or penis jokes or anything like that. He could tell a clever story and make it funny without being vulgar, which I found really, really impressive. But on more of your question, lately actually I've been starting to read graphic novels again, because I read them when I was younger, like X-Men, Wolverine, that kind of stuff. And I stopped entirely. And then I just read Saga, and I heard about it at the Eisners, and I went home and read it, and I have like single-handedly overnight, I think I'm going to read every comic ever written. Because the storytelling, the illustration, the writing in it was just so, I don't know, captivating. Like I felt lost in this world. And it's been a long time since I've read comics where I felt lost in a world, just because I've been ignoring graphic novels. I read webcomics. I read like, you know, stuff like that I write. So Saga's great. I highly recommend it.
It's really good. It's unique.
Yeah, I think we were talking about it last night. You said you ended up reading it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there was one over here. There he is.
Thank you.
We're being filmed. Am I turned? Well, I feel like I'm facing
So from start to finish, how long does it take for you guys, both of you, this question can go to, how long does it take to develop the story for the comic and then also do the graphic design for it?
I think it varies a lot. It depends on the length of the comic. You know, I know he does everything from single panel to long form, and I mostly do short form. If I'm doing like a heart and brain comic, those are pretty quick because it's usually based on something in my life or something I observe in somebody else's life. But when it comes to the medical stuff, that takes a little bit longer. That can take weeks actually for me to come up with one 4-panel comic, because I'll come up with some kind of horrible thing that happens to people, and then I'll write that down and think like, how can I make this into something that makes people feel bad for a gallbladder? And I like that particular comic. I spent weeks writing and rewriting, and then it took me like 4 hours, like drawing it, writing it, rewriting it. But generally, a comic like a heart and brain comic, I'll draw it in like half hour or an hour. It's pretty quick.
Have you ever found that the comics that you like spend forever on and pour your heart and soul into, and you're convinced it's an absolute work of genius? Those are the ones that the first comment is like, fuck you, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you suck, not funny, and it's like everything's spelled wrong.
And I think because of that, a lot of times I hold back on the types of stories that you tell that are, you know, really honest and like compelling kinds of things, that there's this huge time investment, and then at the end of that, everything you've poured into that, you know, for it to fail is like a really frightening prospect for me.
Yeah, if I do a comic, like, you know, your question was how long does it take? And like you said, it varies. Like I tweeted the other day that my favorite word is booby trap, because when you spell it backwards, it's party boob. And that took like a minute, you know. But then I did a comic about a plane crash with Gene Roddenberry, and that took weeks. So it really varies. But yeah, it is terrifying to put that much work into something and then put it out there and be like, ooh, don't, you know. I've actually trained myself not to read Twitter right away, not to read comments. I wait until, especially on Facebook, I wait until they're liked or disliked, so the comments are sort of sorted, just because, you know, people always talk about constructive feedback, and I've actually encountered way more destructive feedback on the internet than constructive from people. Just these little goblins out there to ruin your day, you know. Trolls, I think, is a better word than goblins.
I like goblins.
I don't know why I said goblins. I know they're called trolls. It just sounded cool to say goblins.
I think goblins is somehow even more demeaning.
Yeah, like trolls are like middle class goblins.
Right. They're working class.
Yeah. Any questions about goblins? Yes.
Kind of a follow-up to that. Did you have any works that had an unexpected impact?
What was it?
Did you have any comics that had an unexpected impact, or they were bigger than you thought they were going to be, or they were interpreted a very different way?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the things people get offended by. Like, I did a comic about, it was just laundry day. Like, Brain's like, hey, we got to do laundry. He's got a big bag full of laundry, and Heart's like, let's just buy new clothes. And so I thought, yeah, it's funny, you know, it's a comic about laziness. And somebody commented about how, like, humans don't belong on the earth. Like, it's like perpetuating these ideas are the reason we shouldn't even be alive. And and this turned into this whole, like, argument with other people. And I just said something like, you know, I knew my comics would eventually lead to the downfall of mankind. I just was surprised it was this one. So you never really know, when it comes to environmental stuff, you can never do anything right. So you can have the best intentions, you can recycle, you can do all the things that you are, pretty sure are the right things to do. You really try, and it's just never right. You can never do it right.
Yeah, I'm actually, the same thing about people getting offended. I'm just constantly
Laundry.
astounded. Yeah, like how creative they are in like, I think I'm offended. Let me think about it, I've wanted to do a comic for years about that, and it was something, I can't remember the title, it was really long, but it was something like how to communicate your insufferable, terrible tragedy to a flippant internet cartoonist. And it was a sarcastic piece about basically a step-by-step guide to how to complain about how offended you are. So like step one, are you sensitive? Or are you correcting someone's grammar? And like work through this decision tree on how to like, condemn this person who just made a joke for you for free and like basically poured their heart into it. Yeah, that's when I read comments a lot of the time.
I think it's funny when you have a typo, and I have typos all the time. I have really bad attention to detail. But when I have a typo, it's not because I accidentally misspelled it. It's because I don't know. I've never known how to spell it. That's the reaction. Like, you fool. So yeah, if you see typos, I would say most of the time it's just because I am not paying attention, or I'm stupid.
Yeah, and I wrote a couple grammar comics years ago, like how to use a semicolon, how to use an apostrophe, and so now everybody thinks I'm this Dark Lord grammarian, like bookkeeper guy, and so I make any mistake, and it's just like the goblins are out,
yeah.
But one other thing on your question, you're talking about comics that like didn't do what you thought they would do, or kind of like took a hard left to your expectations. The two that I can think of were not like they went the wrong way, they just went. They kind of exploded, and I didn't think they would. One was the Nikola Tesla comic. I wrote that, and the research in it was kind of mediocre. It was mostly like skimming Wikipedia and like, wow, that's pretty neat, and putting it into this essay that just went crazy. I mean, it did something like a couple million page views in a day, and then from there the museum happened, and Nikola Tesla went from being an unknown into being more of a known. And a lot of things contributed to that, but I think I was one of the early guys. And then the other one was the Christopher Columbus comic. I wrote that, and that I did research well, but I wrote it quickly because Columbus Day was coming, and I wanted to destroy it before it showed up again. And I published it, and once again, it went bananas. It was crazy, and like there were these people that were rioting in Columbus, Ohio, I think, on Columbus Day, and they spray painted some of the words from the comic on like the side of a building, and I'm like, Jesus, calm down. Like,
They signed your name to it.
oh yeah, the Oatmeal made me do it. This is like, Jesus Christ. Because, like at the end of the day, I don't have an editor. I'm just at home like, let's make a comic about koalas who are also Nazis and put that on and see what people think. And you never know what people think. Maybe they don't like that, Nobody likes Nazi koalas anymore.
No.
Can you describe a daily life as a comic artist? Like, when do you get up? When do you work? That kind of thing. And what's your inspiration from? Like, the main source of your inspiration? Thank you.
Those are two pretty big questions. I know Matt gets up and runs like 150 miles, and then by noon we probably have lunch.
No. I only run when I've already eaten 6 lunches, and then I'm like, I should probably do something that matters today, other than just feed the monster.
I'll start, I guess.
Go for it.
So,
I'll just put this away.
Yeah, what do I do? I don't know.
I've never done a dual interview. It's like weird. I feel like.
Yeah, you haven't? Really?
Maybe like one, but there's a moderator usually.
Okay.
Us awkwardly staring at each other. Like,
Yeah. This is perfect.
Yeah.
I don't know if I really have a routine anymore. I just I go into the office whenever I feel like it, and then I'll usually write, and then I will eat lunch for a couple hours, and then I'll draw a comic, and then yeah, that's about it. I don't really do anything else. And the inspiration, that was the other question, right?
Where do you get your ideas from?
My ideas. Really just like anything in my daily life, I'll try to pull ideas from. When it comes to the medical comics, I'll I'll like cycle through some of the common illnesses, or like with the the gallbladder comic. My wife had her gallbladder removed, and I just noticed a lot of different people were having them removed, and I was like really fascinated by this thing that was happening. Like everybody was having it removed. It was like as soon as you get a stone, it's just done. Like there was no better way to treat it. So I get fascinated by that kind of thing. I don't know. You go.
Okay. Yeah, my day is not super interesting either. Generally speaking, I actually am. I do busy work in the morning, so sometimes drawing is actually busy work. Like you have a comic that requires an illustration of something complex, like a tractor or whatever, and tractors take forever. They have all these parts. So sometimes I'll draw like in the morning because I'm caffeinated and I'm fast and I'm in that mood. The evenings are when I'm actually more creative. I feel like it's sometimes where idea generation comes from is at night, like sort of half drunk a lot of the time, like, here, let's make a comic about, and that's sort of where that comes from. The process itself is, the question, where do you get ideas from? That's one of the hardest questions to ask, oftentimes for me, just because it kind of shows up out of nowhere. But generally speaking, I'm kind of with Nick. Like, I find if you read a lot, like especially nonfiction, you can find like this whole wealth of ideas in the world and from people's stories, from animals such as the mantis shrimp, from people such as Tycho Brahe or Christopher Columbus. I find that filling my head with these things is almost like planting seeds of a comic, and then days, weeks, months, years later, the seed sprouts, and then you have something to write about, you have something to say.
Do you have like an actual comic online of Tycho, or was that just the presentation?
I think we just did the presentation. I've always wanted.
It was really good.
Yeah, were you there for that, or was that?
Yeah, it was in Diego.
Yeah. I think. Real quick, this hero of mine, Tycho Brahe, he was an astronomer from 1400s. Did all his work with the naked eye. Was drunk all the time. Was given 1% of the gross domestic product of the entire country. So he was like really rich. So he built a castle, star castle, where he could like look at the stars. So he just hung out all day, getting drunk, looking at space. And anybody that disagreed with him, he challenged them to a sword fight. And he lost one of these fights, and they cut his nose off. So he had a new one made out of gold. And so he had a golden nose. And he kept a pet moose in his castle. And it died, according to one of his, I read a journal entry from someone who visited him. And the moose died because Tycho fed it a bunch of beer, and it fell down the stairs of his castle. So anyway, you can see how this guy is like comedy gold, because he's just this horrible man who contributed immensely to the study of the particularly our solar system. But I've always wanted to cartoon him. I just haven't gotten around to it. He's also the ugliest astronomer I've ever seen. He has this mustache that comes out to like here, and it's white and curly, and he's totally bald. And he looks like Lord Chamberlain from the Dark Crystal. He's got that weird puffy neck thing, that guy. He looks like that guy, but looking at space all day. It's pretty great.
Oh, you want to do that one first?
Yeah.
Since it's so close.
Heart and brain is really relatable. And then with the addition of all the other organs, is that just like all the way that you see the world, or do you have like a person that's attributed to each of those organs that you kind of pull from?
I don't know if I pull from a person specifically for each organ, but I'll a lot of times pick from a genre that I have in my head. So like the personality of each organ is determined by the first comic that it's in. So spleen being this like sort of joke of an organ, I like to kind of challenge that. So I did one. The original spleen comic it was this sort of dark knight, like sort of a Batman-like figure, helping thanklessly. And so I carry that personality throughout the development of each character, whatever it was in that first comic. And my favorite one is Tongue, because Tongue started off as a really just kind of generally impulsive, like I want to taste things that are good character, but over time has become super manipulative. And so I've really enjoyed writing that, and in this book starts to get into song and dance about various things in order to manipulate characters like Hart into eating terrible food. There's one that's like a Mary Poppins parody where tongue is trying to convince them to put sugar on cereal. And yeah, so I think I just kind of come up with them based on general one-dimensional things and then build from there. Over here.
What were your guys' journeys to becoming cartoonists? And this question is specifically for Matthew. How did you get your handwriting to be like a font?
My handwriting actually was a free font I downloaded 7 years ago called Burst My Bubble, which I think I just did for you, actually. The other handwriting I use is a cool brush I use that I created in Illustrator that creates sort of a line with a thick middle and a pointy tip on it. It looks really neat. I forgot the other question. What was it?
Your journey to becoming a cartoonist.
Oh, right. I'll do the quick version. I used to build websites, and I was a web developer, software engineer. Did a lot of stuff with Linux, Perl, PHP. And then I got tired of working for people because I am what you call a tyrant and a quote-unquote horrible employee. A insufferable nightmare of a creative. So I was like, maybe it'd be better for the world if I wasn't in an office all day terrorizing everybody. So I started an online dating website because at the time there's this website called Plenty of Fish that was in Canada. It was a free dating site, and the guy that made it was one guy that built it, and it was, you know, at the time the largest social network in that country. So I thought I could build that. So I cloned it, created a better version of it, and started marketing it in the United States. It did pretty well, but what I was doing was using comics and quizzes to market it, and then those got more popular than the dating site did. Like, people wanted to read those rather than, you know, go find a date. So I ended up selling that website and deciding basically that I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to write comics about dating. And after I sold it, I had to go work for the people who bought it, and it was, once again, me in an office being horrible and fighting with everybody. So I started the Oatmeal, and yeah, that took off pretty quick. I got really, really fortunate. At the time, Dig loved me, and so every comic I put out, Dig would put me on their homepage, back when Dig mattered. And yeah, it just went from there.
I've been cartooning since I was a kid. It's always been kind of my passion. And my parents actually encouraged me to go to art school, and I was like, you can't make any money doing art. It's stupid. So I didn't do it. It was like kind of a reverse. Most people, like, their parents tell them to go be a doctor and a lawyer. My parents were like, you know, do what you want to do. You can do it. So it was really weird. So I went into psychology and didn't do anything with that. And then decided, I realized like graphic design was sort of an art that you could make money at. So I went into that and took a few classes, worked my way up, and was doing that for way too long. And started winning some t-shirt contests online with cartoons, because like throughout the years I was still dabbling in cartoons. Like, I still kept coming back to it. But when I was winning the contests, I realized, yeah, like, oh, there might be more to this than I realized. And then I saw people like Matt who were making a nice living at it, and so then I decided to like really go for it. And I just went online, started sharing stuff, and I didn't think too much about the money aspect for the first year. I was just like really addicted to the fact that I could make this stuff and share it with people. And there was no syndicate saying, no, you're not allowed to share it with people. You know, that's the great thing about the internet. Like he was telling you earlier, like you can share it and just make comics. So yeah, and that combined with the fact that I really hated my job, like passionately hated it, I decided after about the first year to like really push hard, and then I started selling merchandise and things like that, and got the publishing deal for the first book, and that's when I decided to quit my job, and here I am. Still not at that job. I did not go back. We're over here.
Thinking into the future, do you ever anticipate making your comics into something that's voice animated or a movie?
I think we both probably want to do that. I don't really have any details, but yeah, it's definitely something I'm interested in.
Yeah, I have been. It's hard though, you know. Like, there's this assumption that taking a webcomic or a comic and turning it into an animated piece. Just means taking a character you've written and adding voice, but the slightest intonation change can make a joke flat or not funny. You know, the wrong expression, the wrong mouth, the wrong motion can ruin it. So I had a pilot made of a cartoon called The Bobcats years ago. There's these two cats that wear neckties that work in an office, and it was terrible. Like, I had them do the pilot, and it was just, it ruined it. So I've always been sort of afraid of it, because it's hard.
I've found with my stuff, you know, the characters are ongoing, but the targeting has really been the most difficult part. You know, finding out, do we go for kids with the educational aspect? Do we go, you know, sort of like 11 to 15? Do we go adult? So yeah, it's really complicated trying to figure out how to place that into the new medium. We have, oh, there's like a bunch. Yeah, you pick.
What does the butterfly symbolize?
What?
The butterfly, what does that symbolize?
What does the butterfly symbolize? I like to leave that open to fan interpretation generally. I think it does and it does not have meaning, and sometimes, I mean, that's probably just because I'm really sloppy. You know, like I sometimes forget to put it in, sometimes I put it in when it doesn't matter, but I think generally when I look at it, it's simply like the unknown, so it's like leading heart into the unknown. So that doesn't have to be a good thing or a bad thing, it's just something new. And so there are a lot of times when I am purposeful with that, and you know, butterfly comes in at a certain panel, leaves at a certain panel, but if you're looking to like really read into it, I would suggest that you don't. Only because I probably forgot to draw it in that day.
When you guys are drawing or writing during the day, are you typically working on your comics, or is there other like artwork that you guys like to do, or like doodle or sketch, like just for yourselves or things like that?
I don't really draw anything else.
I was just talking to him about this at the bookstore next door because we grabbed coffee. I do draw sometimes at night, but more for functional reasons. Like I'll open up an art book and be like, okay, I should learn how to draw horses or whatever better.
How's that going?
Bad. Actually, I had one book that it was like how to draw animals, anatomy A to Z, and it was all deer. And I did the whole book. So I can draw deer amazingly well.
That's awesome. I mean, that's good.
How many deer comics have I done since then? Like, it's totally useless. But I was telling him, I was asking if he does Inktober. That's where every day for a month you draw using pen and ink on paper. And he doesn't, and I don't. And that's mostly just because, like, I'm kind of burnt out at night with drawing. Like, I get to the point where I just want to, like, stare at TV and not think or read or something. I don't know. I don't know if that's true with a lot of artists, but like creatively, I'm just so saturated during the day.
Yeah, it's a pretty mentally demanding job. You wouldn't really think so because it seems so simple on the exterior, but yeah, I'm ready to just turn the brain off.
I've done the Tetris thing where they did that study in the 80s where people would play Tetris and then go to sleep, and as they're falling asleep, they would still see the blocks moving. I've done that when I go to bed, and I can still see Illustrator, like, the panels and the fucking vector lines and tangent. It's horrible. So
I want to try the Tetris thing.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. We suffer immensely for what we give you guys. We should probably grab a question on this side, maybe. I feel like the right people.
Too late.
We'll get yours, and then we'll move over. Especially this gentleman up here, I think, needs.
Is there anything you won't write about or try to avoid at all costs?
I have a whole list.
What is that list?
You have a list.
Pick any offensive word that would, I don't write about. I don't cover politics a lot. I have a little lately, just because Trump's an easy target and it's funny, but I used to not touch religion, but then I did the one, How to Suck at Your Religion. I kind of broke the seal on that, but that's pretty much it.
I don't have like a list that I keep around, but I generally don't. I don't really write about things that express my personal opinion. I try to focus more on the decision-making process, the thought process behind making a final decision, and so if I try to influence in a certain way, it's a little bit more subtle, I guess, but I kind of avoid politics, religion, pop culture for the most part, but I'm not totally opposed to it. I think I saw one, a couple over here.
Thank you. So you guys have sort of branched out to other media, I guess, to some extent. Both of you have a card game right now, for example. I was just curious, how did that experience feed back into your original website or original characters, so on and so forth? And for Matt, how was it like interacting with Elon Musk?
What was the first part of your question? I didn't catch
So the
that.
first question is, I was just interested, you started with the website and then you branched off to, say, have a card game, or exploring other media. How did that feed back into your original website or characters?
Yeah, it did in the way that if I just did comics, if I was like a newspaper cartoonist and I wrote the same Garfield strip every day for 30 years, I would be miserable, and the art would suffer for it, and the art would be miserable, and the comedy would be. So, like, me taking a break from the Oatmeal for a year to focus on Exploding Kittens, I feel did amazing things for the Oatmeal, because when I go back to it, I'm refreshed. Like, I got to try this other thing, and I do that a lot. I tend to pivot from project to project. That's why sometimes kind of erratic, you know? Exploding Kittens, Beat the Blurch, running comics, long-form storytelling, one-panel fart jokes. It's kind of all over the place. My interaction with Elon Musk, I had a phone conversation with him because I'll spare you, but I sort of internet bully motivated him into giving me and the museum project money to help fund it. Talking to him was very scary. I was very nervous because he's smarter than me. He was very kind, but yeah, I was very uncomfortable on that entire phone call. So
that would be so intimidating. I guess with my game, it's not out yet, so I can't really answer how that medium has fed back into the comics yet, but I assume it'll be awesome.
I'm going to point at one. This one.
Oh, you did?
You do all the pointing.
I already pointed, so.
Okay, we pointed at the same person, so it's fine.
So this kind of goes a little bit back to the animated bit, mainly on the voice side. I want to know what the characters sound like in your head. When you're reading it back to you, what voice do you give them?
Do you have a specific character? One of...
It's probably easier for you, Nick, to do Heart and Brain, Oatmeal, if you have a favorite.
Okay, so
maybe
then
what
I'll
the
start.
mantis shrimp would sound like.
I do have some specific voices in mind, but generally not so much. I had to think about that when we started looking into developing like pitches for Heart and Brain. And I think Heart would have a higher voice, but it has to be, this would be a really difficult one that you'd have to probably cast an unknown where it's not obnoxious. You know, that's like a really tricky, fine line, I think. Brain, I think one of the ideas I had was, what is Niles Crane, what's his name again? David Hyde Pierce, yeah, like the one time I can't remember the name. And Tongue, I kind of have an idea for. Lars, I always saw as like Brian Posehn. Does anybody know Brian Posehn? Doesn't, well.
I know that name. What's he from?
He's like this bit actor, like this huge guy with glasses and a beard, and like, yeah, he's really goofy looking. He basically looks like Lars. Yeah.
Has anyone here played the Exploding Kittens app, the mobile app? Maybe like one, not even one person. So I'll get to your question, but that's a funny thing. I made a card game, which is technology that's been around for like hundreds of years, or pieces of paper, and the entire internet wants to play my game. And then we created a mobile app, which I spent months on and poured my heart and soul into, and it's amazing and fun and well balanced. And I did all the characters and all the design, and I did all the voices. And I'm like, hey, you guys for the app? They're like, no. Do you want the app? No. It's like, you don't want the new app, you want the card game. It's kind of cool. Like, tabletop apparently is alive and well because people don't want to stare in their phones anymore. They want to interact with each other. But I did all the voices in the app, and they're pretty great. So if you ever want to know what Oatmeal characters sound like, they sound like that. And since now you've played the goddamn thing, it's not do you any good.
I played.
You played one person, him.
Yeah.
There.
The voices are funny.
Her.
Oh yeah. Oh, clearly.
Do you get much feedback from doctors about your descriptions of the organs? Like, do they like try to influence how you?
This must be for me. Do I get feedback about the organs? Yeah, I definitely do. If I do anything wrong, I'll have doctors messaging me and saying, "Do you need help?" And yeah, they'll let me know right away. I like for the organ attack game. Is anybody familiar with organ attack? That's good. I'll take it. So for that game, you play a series of afflictions on corresponding organs and try to remove each other's organs until you get the last one remaining with at least one organ. And I did have my sister-in-law look through that. She's a surgeon, and you know, she checked everything. But yeah, I get a lot of ideas from doctors, a lot of feedback. Generally speaking, they seem to think I'm doing okay, so that's good. I think that's the end of my answer. Do you want to point? I'm gonna point. I saw one. No, it's gone now. Yeah, up here, right up here.
I don't know what time should we eat on time.
It's almost 8.
Oh yeah, we should probably do like 2 more.
Sounds good.
Hi, this is for Nick. I just wanted to ask, are you creating new characters aside from the ones in Gut Instincts?
Am I creating new characters?
Yes.
Yeah, probably all the time. And it'll be a matter of having a comic that makes sense for a new character. And then once the character's in, like they're in. There are a couple new ones that were in the Organ Attack game in the expansion pack that aren't really characters, like Skin. And that's one I'm really excited about because it's actually a skin cross-section, so it's this really hideous block of just like, all this stuff going on. So that's the one I'm most excited to bring in as a regular character. And, you know, there's some others. But I'm constantly developing new ones.
We're going to do one more question, I think. So it better be a good one.
Two.
We're going to do 2 more questions, so they better be good ones. How about you right here in front?
What are some of the oddest requests you guys have gotten from people?
Yours are probably odder. I mean, mine are all like medical stuff. Like people contact me and say like I have, you know, this like crazy disease of some kind, and can you make that into a comic? And then I'll look it up, and it's super complicated. And but I get them all the time, and they're really specific things. So pretty much all my requests are odd, but cool.
Yeah, I get some odd ones, but I really don't want to talk about that. What I want to say is the thing that I get that's not odd, that I get all the time, that I would appreciate it if you don't do tonight, is don't stand in line and come up to me and tell me about your cat. I don't care.
Do that. You have to do that now.
Tell me about your cat. I don't care. I don't want to hear any more cat anecdotes. I've heard about more cats than most people, I think, and I'm sick of it. I know I wrote a book about cats. I know. I made a card game that blows
I've got a
up
story
to
for you.
offset each other. No more cat stories. That's a perfect question to like. It had utility for me.
Yeah.
Now, I cut the night's time.
You need like a placard with rules on it.
I used to have a policy at Comic-Con where I had a sign up that said, if you tell me about your cat, I will draw a dick with dick arms with dick fingers in your book. And I drew a lot of them because people wouldn't see the sign and be like, "Whoa, my little Scrambles, he's a rascal. Your book's about Scrambles." And yeah, that's great. Is this for your kid, this book? Okay, one more question. Gentleman very far back in the red shirt.
And this has to be the best question of the entire night. So.
Do you see yourselves as web cartoonists who do other things to pay the bills, or do you see yourselves as guys who do things to pay the bills and you're cartoonists on the side? And like, how do you find that balance?
Do on the side? I think as a web cartoonist, everything else that you do surrounding that comic, it's all part of it.
Yeah, everything stems from that for me. Like, I'll do these other projects like Exploding Kittens or books or coloring books or whatever, but it all comes down to as long as I'm still making free comics and people are reading them, that's the core of it. Start there, build that, and then you can, you know, do other things that sort of pay the bills. Yeah.
I think we could probably do one more if we could.
Sure, yeah.
Round it out to 8.
All right, we'll do one more.
You guys want to pick?
Yeah. Or did you point at somebody?
I didn't point.
Oh, okay, I was pointing at
You had to have the last call.
Sorry.
in your comics, you occasionally go to like very deep and thoughtful places, which I really appreciate and think is kind of awesome. Is that like a very intentional space that you create for that, or do you write those comics and then you're like, oh shit, well that was a little dark?
I don't know. I think it's intentional. I mean, I don't mean to accidentally say things that are, I don't know, dark. I think I mean to. I know I write very deliberately a lot of the time. Like the more recent one was called How to Be Perfectly Unhappy, and I wrote a comic about my thoughts on happiness, because I don't really feel the way most people do, or maybe I do, I don't know, about what is happy and what is unhappy. With that, I deliberately wrote that, you know, mostly for selfish reasons. I wanted my friends and family and people who meet me at cons to know I'm not a smiling, laughing person who clicks my heels and is jolly and like has joy coming out of me. I'm actually quite cold a lot of the time, and I don't smile. And
curmudgeon,
a misanthropic, nightmarish curmudgeon man. So that comic I felt had a bit of an agenda for me personally, and oftentimes I'll write these things and think, okay, I'm going to put this thing out that this is how I feel. Like I wrote a comic about distance running, and I used to be a distance runner, and I sort of summarized why I do these terrible things when I run. Why do I suffer? And I thought maybe if I write these things, other people will agree. Maybe not. And with that case, they did, this was amazing. You know, like I've been doing the Oatmeal for 7 years now, and after a while, I'm like, I don't want to write 5 reasons to bake in your unicorn zombie listicle bullshit anymore. I want to write things that are meaningful. You know, so it's been good. I've been really enjoying I've been enjoying what I do immensely over the past couple of years.
Awesome.
All right, guys.
I think that's it for the talking. I think we're going to go sit somewhere.
Thank you.